All right, welcome everyone. We're back with another Advisory Edge podcast, and I am delighted to have our first Scottish guest from the balmy north. We have Graeme Morrison of Northern Accountants. Welcome, Graeme.
Thanks, Richard. It's good to be here. As you say, it's a bit far north just now, so we were just discussing earlier how we're both sitting in the dark at different times of the day.
Yeah, I've actually had a nice summer day here in Wellington, New Zealand, but it's dark now. Everyone's gone home. No one's burning the midnight oil. But you're in. It's is it spring? Not quite.
No, no, we're still midwinter. We haven't seen sunlight for about 2 months. Still raining, snow.
So tell us a little bit
Uh,
about Northern. You've got more than one office, but you're up north.
yeah, so with Northern Accountants, we I originally was involved in Power by Cloud, which I guess is how we got together with Spotlight Reporting. So we were
Yeah,
using you guys for a lot of board level report forecasting, etc., to build a bit of integrity into that aspect of work. Just under 2 years ago, Northern Accountants bought Empowered. So Northern would focus on compliance accounting predominantly, bookkeeping, VAT, CIS, etc., all the way up to management accounts, whereas Empowered was more focused on, I guess the easiest way to describe it is fractional CFO, FD support services, strategy, and more forward looking. Predominantly, there was a bit of overlap, but that's generally what we looked at. So we were looking at more doing outsourced finance functions than doing sort of less involved, if you like. So it was a good fit for Northern and Empowered to get together and start working. So we have this little bit of difference where Empowered was very much a remote service working across the UK, and Northern had two offices, one in Leeds and one in Hull, where the headquarters based in Leeds. So yes, our headquarters is in Leeds, but I have the joys of sitting in Aberdeen as a throwback to the remote working and remote service that the Empower guys had.
nice, and a beautiful spot you're in as well. Well, I
Yeah,
remember traveling there many, many years ago. So, how was it for you in terms of obviously empowered by cloud and the work you were doing there, and being much more advisory, say, than the existing
yeah.
Northern team? That there's a lot of mergers and things going on. How were there some friction points there? Have you dragged everyone on the journey towards being, I believe you were calling yourself strategic growth accountants?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So I think we have been moving in that direction. So I think the if we look at where we positioned Empowered, so we were trying to sit between an in-house team and an external accountant. So we're sitting in that gap, and pretty much everyone that worked at Empowered had worked in industry at
Right.
some point. So myself, I'd um, had quite a few senior FD roles in different sizes of businesses, different types of businesses. And everyone had some level of experience of working in industry. So we knew what owner managers wanted. And we used to talk about uh, so management accounts, if all you've ever done is compliance work, year-end accounts, when it comes to management accounts, a lot of accountancy firms look at it and say, well, it's just more regular statutory accounts. And they've got that kind of mindset in it. I'm trying not to be too controversial, but the management accounts are there to help you make decisions. And if we show information that isn't quite correct in terms of accounting standards, it's because it makes it easier to make better decisions. So we might show it in a different format, a different layout, whatever, because we are trying to translate information to owner managers that generally aren't financially aware or financially trained. So we show things
Yeah.
in different ways. And Spotlight's brilliant for that because of the graphic interfaces and stuff.
Thank you.
So to
Yeah,
pull
no,
everyone along,
you
sorry, Richard.
certainly well, I was just going to say you're certainly a different breed, and I just wanted to before you move on, and sorry to interrupt, but I feel like you made a really interesting point there because and I've spent my recent career trying to convince compliance accountants of the value of management accounts and better decision making and getting the information across, whether it's a dashboard charts, whatever it happens to be, rather than, this kind of annual historic backwards looking, actually not useful at all for decision making. So of course you understand that intimately, having been a CFO. How did you get the team, and I presume you had some team members that came with you,
Yeah.
but the existing team to make that mindset shift? Because it is quite a fundamental shift.
Yeah, I mean, 100% is it. I talk it is a mindset shift, and we
Mm,
see a lot of coaches or training companies turning around and saying, we'll turn your business into an advisory firm over the weekend or with an hour's coaching session.
yeah,
And it's easy to give a process or checklist or all the rest of it. But to me, certainly at FD, we talk a lot about you're a translator. You're telling
mm,
the story of the numbers. And at some point, you have to move from being concerned about the numbers being the accuracy of the numbers, which is a given, and to actually say what it means, where it's leading, if trends continue, what it means for the business, and how you can change it. So one of the ways that we're bringing the team along, and certainly the client manager along, and trying to move that mindset is we've set up an FD Academy within
okay,
Northern Accountants. So we've been running that since I think about October last year. We'll finish the first cohort at the end of March. So every
nice.
couple of weeks, we're looking at different aspects of it, whether it's forecasting, whether it's cash flow. Last week, we were actually talking about presenting information. So not just how you prepare, how you get stuff. Have a think about what the owner manager is looking for.
Mm,
They're not interested if we stick with UK. Is it in compliance with FRS 102? That
yeah,
means nothing to them. So they're looking at it and saying, what's happening in the business? What does it mean? Is it important? And do I need to change anything? And and that's the four questions we're trying to answer all the time. And that'll be a combination of management information. We worked with clients before, and some of them are just dyslexic. Might just be numbers dyslexic, but you know, I worked as an FD in a offshore logistics business about 15 years ago.
mm.
And when I went in, the board pack was 24 tabs on an Excel spreadsheet.
Ooh.
All right. No commentary, no graphs,
Yeah,
just monthly P&Ls, 24 monthly P&Ls, um, which I distilled down to one dashboard.
yeah.
But if it
Have,
takes me 4 or 5 hours to work out what's happening,
yeah.
an operations manager's lost.
Well, I think too, to your point about, dyslexia or whatever it happens to be, but there is that entrepreneurial mindset. They're often very visual, kind of the left brain, right brain
Yeah.
thing, and typically us accountants aren't, in quite the same way. But yeah, being that translator, I think it's a brilliant word, and also a bit of a storyteller. So I'm intrigued by the translation, um, of the numbers into words and stories. And I've had some debates with one or two of the other podcast victims around whether you can actually train your team to intuitively understand how to make that translation and how to have those discussions
Yeah.
with clients that create value, or whether you need to hire people with the soft skills first. So where do you kind of fall in that camp? Obviously, you've got an academy, but have you hired people with a different skill set than good old-fashioned accounting?
Um, I think we have to come back that we are accountancy based. So there's a base level of accounting knowledge that you need.
Yep.
So I think that it's almost like to get onto the playing field, you need that level. So if we
I'd agree.
start
Yeah.
start with that as a basis, we had we had an interesting journey at Empowered because we tried to focus a lot heavier on advisory and less on compliance. At one stage, we didn't even offer year-end accounts or tax or anything. We just refused to do it.
Yep.
And then we eventually started offering it, and we had this kind of mantra: it's an add-on, not a standalone. So we wouldn't do it as a standalone service. It was part of a outsourced finance function. We would bolt it on. But so if we were doing all the numbers on a monthly basis, we'd do it. If we wouldn't just do it as a one-off hit. Now, what we found is if you take people from a traditionally trained accountancy firm, which is what I was. I mean, I was 10 years at Ernst& Young before I moved
Yeah.
out and realized that I had to learn a whole different skill set in a startup company that, working in corporate finance, I thought I knew everything. And then that was quite a rude awakening the first week in a new CFO role. And so you have people that are traditionally trained that are brilliant at managing portfolios, brilliant at getting work done, brilliant at, the accuracy of the numbers. You take people out of industry, they're brilliant at understanding what managers need, what's important in a business, analysing the drivers behind the business, and understanding what that means going forward, because that's what they're used to doing. But they're not as good at managing multiple portfolios and juggling clients because they're
Mm.
generally used to dealing with one or two companies. So trying to find the right mix of that was often challenging. So we tried to take people that were out of industry and then hope that they could manage a portfolio just because they would have had that slightly different mindset because they've been asked different questions. One of the things we spoke about in Academy last week was we, we tend to write reports as accountants. We tend to write reports for accountants. We try to show how smart we are, how qualified we are, and use big words and all the rest of it. So we were, as part of this translation thing, we threw up and said, well, let's not use accruals or prepayments. Let's actually just say what they are. You know, it's just a cost that we haven't incurred yet, or we
Yeah.
haven't had an invoice for.
Yeah.
Just use that language. We don't, and try to get it into a normal language. We don't, I ran a lift and shift business or owned a lift and shift business, so I
Mm.
learned all about cranes and lift plans and all the rest of it. We
Yeah.
don't expect our team to understand how to draw a lift plan. So why should we expect
Mm.
owner managers to understand accounting?
Absolutely. So the training that the FD Academy does, how much of it is soft skills versus what you'd call, accountant slash CFO
Um, we're
science?
we're probably running 50-50
Mm.
in terms of between soft skills and uh, it's not even technical training. It's more just we're used to looking backwards. Let's look forwards and how do we
Yeah.
look forwards and how do we take that? So we're talking about so Anna, who's our development director, she's involved in it as well, and we're discussing how do you run meetings, how do you facilitate meetings and
Mm.
discussions. So we're running sessions like that. How do you have difficult conversations if the numbers aren't quite where the owner thinks they are or would like them to be, or they're in a downward trend? So we're layering that in to have to be able to hold those meetings and conversations, as well as saying, well, how do you prepare a forecast? What are the things you look for? How do
Yeah.
you provide business insights on management information rather than just preparing information? So, yeah, I mean, it's less as you become more senior, and you'll know this yourself, Rich. You do less technical accounting and more interpretation.
Yeah. So you've got this interesting FD, factory almost of advisors that you're helping to grow. So that was, one of my other questions was around how much of the firm time, effort, energy, money, etc., is invested back into the education and upskilling of the team, and how much of this is an internal driven thing, or how much are you bringing in others to help and stimulate the whole process?
Um, it depends what aspect and what level we're looking at. So
Hmm.
we have training academies for pretty much every level from new start all the way through. So we're gradually building that out. So we'll have an apprenticeship level, we'll have a client manager level. We're adding on the FT academy level.
Yeah.
We're looking at, we call it CFO. Now, I always have this debate with people on LinkedIn about what's the difference between an FD and a CFO.
Yeah.
I'm old school UK, so an FD was like the top finance position, and
Mm.
then it seemed to be CFO was a US term. Now there seems to be a bit of a mix where CFO is generally higher up the pecking order, mostly because American businesses bought UK businesses. And you
Right.
report in a CFO in the States.
Yep.
But we call it CFO because we look at that as more project based, whereas
Okay.
FD is more ongoing retained. Still looking forward, still looking at allowing owners to make better decisions forward. But our CFO, and that's the next thing we're probably going to build out, but that's more around sort of corporate finance type work, so buying, selling
Right.
businesses, fundraising, and all the rest of it. We'll probably put that out as a rather than build in house.
Nice. I find the whole thing fascinating, really, because so many firms who aspire to or are doing advisory work actually don't have a great mix of the kind of education, training, and career development that you're outlining. So I think this is rarer than you may suppose. I don't know. Um, but hearing some of the work you're doing, the FD, the CFO, the finance team, what's your typical, or no, I'll rephrase that. What's your ideal client? You get a knock on the door, and they want to engage you. What are you hoping that they'll bring to Northern Accountants?
Um, that's an interesting question, actually. That's so there's an ideal client in terms of sort of business size and all the rest of it. But if I was speaking from a personal point of view, this perhaps isn't an ideal client from a company point of view, and because from a firm point of view, you want someone that you'll grow with and have a long relationship with over a period of time, help them grow and all the rest of it. Um, and you have your ARR building up. So from a firm point of view, we're looking at under audit threshold, which now is up about 50
Okay.
million
Yep.
turnover.
Hmm.
Um, we probably don't want to go below a million turnover, broadly speaking, because so that's our sweet spot's probably turnover wise between 5 and 10. From my perspective, an ideal client for me is someone who comes in, and if I'm being totally honest, a little bit of a mess. So we
Right.
can tidy all that up.
Yes.
We can then map out what we want to do over the next 3 to 5 years and use. We've got something called board view where we're doing a retained FD element where we're attending board meetings, we're having discussions with them, we're trying to help them develop the business. A lot of the time, the owner manager's heavily involved in day to day, so we're trying to get them to a position where they're moving away from being on the tools to managing to being an investor almost. So they're
Yep.
extracted from the
Yep.
business. And I like companies that we can take on that journey and then at some point in the future help exit. So from a
Nice.
personal point of view, I like that lifestyle. I'm
Yep.
sorry, that business cycle journey. As I say, that exit piece maybe isn't the most ideal for the firm overall. But I always say at some point everyone has to exit.
Oh,
It's
there's
just a
money in
matter of time.
succession, isn't there?
Yeah,
We've had some clients
yeah,
like that in the past.
yeah.
So
So
what's
until
what kind of services you got? Your board view, which is my practice back in the day, we did advisory boards, which sounds reasonably
Mhm.
similar. I'm presuming though, I mean this is a full service firm.
Yeah,
Strategic planning, cash flow
yeah,
forecasting. What's your
yeah.
kind of what's your gold package? If I
So
can be so if
all
I
of
can
the
be so
above.
bold.
So
Yeah.
I so we'll go if you take it from the level, it's year-end accounts and tax compliance. Then we're moving into running elements of the finance team.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of processing and getting numbers right bit. Once you move up, what we're looking at is a strategic planning day.
Nice.
Where are you just now? Where do you want to go? What's stopping you get there? How do we overcome those barriers? What actions do we need to take? So I do quite a lot of that. And from there, that kind of dictates what we do after it. So, but if a normal journey would be we'd have a strategy day, we'd have a lot of great ideas, we'd have a lot of actions come out, and um, I would then normally go, right, this is great. We need to financially plan that and say, what does it look like in numbers? So if we've got a 3-year plan to hit, double turnover, double profit, whatever the aspiration is, um, how does that look like? Because that'll drive priorities and what the business can afford. Then once we've mapped that out, we're looking at, can we help you? Do we need system upgrades? Do we need better reporting? Do we need um, someone that's there and you've got access to? Because running your own business is quite a lonely place. So
Absolutely.
having a sounding board who doesn't have any skin in the game, doesn't have any,
Mm.
is pretty independent and unbiased, and just tells you, well, actually, I think you're going wrong here, or that's a good idea. And just having that regular contact and discussion, as well as saying, well, we said we were going to do this in the first quarter. Is that still realistic? Is it still the aim you want to go for? So we'll have an element of FD retained, and then if we need funding or let's just call it corporate finance, transactional type change ownership, we'll bring that in as and when.
Nice, and that's an extra layer than many,
Yeah,
firms provide. What's interesting to me, and I've this my experience when I ran my boutique advisory firm, and many of the people I've spoken to who are doing this well, strategic planning and the annual strategy day seems to be the secret sauce. And you touched on it, Graham, around so many things often come out of that, and I'm certainly an advocate that the if that's run well, the customer ends up selling all the projects and things for the year ahead
yeah,
that
yeah.
hopefully you can provide. So I think for our listeners, because I know a lot of perhaps more traditional firms are very nervous around strategic planning and the ongoing mentoring that you talk about. And of course, you've got to have the skill set to do it, but it sets you up as an accounting firm
Mm,
alongside the client getting that service for, hopefully another whole cycle of activity.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you find is, and certainly what I found, you know, the owner will have an idea. It won't be written down. They'll kind of vaguely know where they want to go.
Mm,
Then you start challenging some of the thought process, and it's like, so I had one probably tail end of last year, and this particular business wanted to set up. It was a construction company, large construction projects, say 2 to 4 million over a couple of year period or 18-month period. But they wanted to set up a small works business, so quicker turnaround, a couple of 100,000 size of projects.
mm,
So we had a discussion about that, how they were going to resource it up, what they needed to get it off the ground. Would it be a training ground for some of their project managers to do the small works, then move on to the bigger and all the rest of it? And I think by the next morning, they come back and say, we've had a real think about what you were saying and how we're going to do it. And it's just a distraction, so we're not going to do it anymore. And that was it, just binned.
yeah.
And it's like, and it's those discussions that sort of say, right, we need to stay focused here and what do I want out of it,
Mm,
and um, what's the best way to achieve that. And I think what I talk about is let's get rid of the noise. So everybody's got loads of ideas. So
yes.
let's just say, well, that one's not a good one. Let's explore that a bit more. This is
Mm,
this is core, so we have to go after that. And it's trying to get that clarity. And you mentioned before about maybe more of the traditional compliance. All it is a conversation. There is it's a conversation and challenge and being comfortable doing that.
mm,
There's not a lot
yeah.
of technical. Yes, you and I have got a lot of experience behind us in terms of running these sessions and having, age comes with experience, but at the end of the day, it's just a conversation.
I like that, and I actually talk about, in some ways, you know, certain people argue about what advisory means, and I think better conversations
Yeah,
is to be honest, in a nutshell,
yeah,
what we try and do. I'm intrigued, Graham, at obviously you started it in a really big shop. did your own stuff in various companies as FD. What's your origin story? Because I did see something on the website that your father's to blame, a little bit like my father was. He was
Um,
what got you into the profession? And if you could just add to your answer, how over the years has your why changed, if it has? How did you get in? What gets you out of bed in the morning now?
okay. So my dad's a little bit to blame, but he's not an accountant, he's an engineer. So
Ah, okay. Wasn't there a
um,
trade show involved and you got
yeah, so we
seduced?
went to a career fair in Glasgow
Right.
when I was about 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And to be, well, I'll probably get grief for this from the rest of the family, but I'm pretty sure he was trying to get me involved in engineering.
And you
And to be
spoke to
fair,
the
I was
wrong
good at
people.
maths. I was good at maths and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
um, ICAS, so the Scottish Institute, had a little and it was a little desk. It was like two people sitting at a desk,
Yeah.
and there was one flyer there, and I sort of said, "Yeah, it sounds a bit interesting." And the thing that got me was, if you get an ICAS qualification, you can travel the world and work in pretty much any business.
Okay. Which I suppose
And I
is
thought
true on one
that's
level.
that sounds pretty interesting. I quite fancy doing that. So
Yeah.
um,
You could
so
have
that
joined the
kind of
Merchant Navy though. They do this, they travel the world.
yeah, but I'm not very
No?
good. I'm kind of a bit seasick, and
Oh, okay.
so I got my exams. I went to university,
Mm.
got a training contract with Ernst and Young in Glasgow, and did 3 years
Nice.
there. Um, I was I was looking at, as soon as I qualified, I was going to take a year out and come to your side of the world because I've got a lot of family that stay
Okay. Mhm.
down around Sydney. Um, and about 3 or 4 months before I qualified, Sydney office were looking for staff on a 2 year secondment. So I thought, let's do that. So I went out for
Mhm.
2 years with EY.
Fantastic.
At the time, they still had their offices overlooking Darling Harbour. Um,
Yeah,
I
it's not
then came
bad, is
back.
it?
Oh, it's just tremendous. A great lifestyle. I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. I then came back to Aberdeen and joined corporate finance and ended up working on secondments and working on projects. So I ended up working on projects all over the world.
Yeah.
So North America, Europe, throughout Europe. And I just enjoyed it, getting involved. So I'd done 10 years there. And when you work in corporate finance, I always had this. Um, I felt a bit incomplete. So you do the transaction and walk away.
Mm.
And you've been involved with a team for so long, 3, 6, 12 months sometimes. And I always was curious what they did after it.
Yeah.
After the acquisition, after
Yeah.
whatever it was. So I joined a startup company, which was a real eye opener. So
Mm.
you go from quite a narrow specialism that you're really good at to being responsible for everything other than operations.
Absolutely.
And trying to raise funding. That didn't go that great because about 3 or 4 months after I joined, 9/11 happened and
Uh,
funders pulled all the funding. So
mm.
I then learned that I had a bit of a knack for dealing with businesses in difficult situations, no money, struggling. So I did quite a
Right.
lot of turnarounds
Nice.
and trying to deal with them. I then moved into a local firm. Well, it was a local firm at the time. It's not quite a large AAB.
Yep.
Did a bit more corporate finance and then started doing FD work up until the point I bought my own business and then ran that for 7 years and into Empowered. So
Right.
over that time, I think it's almost in the first half of my career, or sorry, after I left EY, that first part there, I was trying to grow businesses and the excitement and the drive of growing businesses
Mm.
and the sort of jam tomorrow will make a lot of money and all this sort of stuff. So I think that was quite a big motivator and the challenge in doing it. Now, um, I want to, I'm at the stage where there's probably two things, or a couple of things I want to do. I want to help owner managers realize their goal, help them get a better business, and not have what I've been involved in over the years in terms of the 80-hour weeks, the stress
Yeah.
of not paying wages, struggling with cash, all the rest of it. That I got involved with turnarounds, and at various times, if you're in a business, you'll hit that point. And then there's a little bit of legacy I'd like to do in terms of which is a bit around what we're doing with FD Academy, helping those that are kind of starting out on that journey get that change in mindset and accelerate that learning without having to go through all the battle scars. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, you've
if
had
I
a
can then,
very interesting career, and I think that's very worthy work, and I can understand I suppose some of the transactional nature of what you did and that yearning to be part of the overall journey and have that impact. And from everything I hear, you're having an impactful presence in the profession, so that must be very rewarding. And I suppose answers the question a little bit to the extent of what gets you out of bed in the morning.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I just want to. Um, I like coaching people. I like helping people improve and solving problems. So if someone comes to me and they sort of say, "Oh, we're done," it's like, well, maybe you're not. Let's just sit down and
yeah.
see what we can do here.
Hey, if you're doing that for clients and you're doing that for the team, that's a pretty good legacy and something to
Yeah,
be proud of. Graeme, we're going to wrap now, and I just want to give you the chance to share either, something you wish you'd done differently or something you've learned on the way that was valuable, or just a bon mot of wisdom for the listeners and watchers. We could talk all night because we've got, there's some tremendous stuff, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you when I'm in the UK to maybe have
yeah,
a further chat over a cold one. But
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
what's your
I now I now feel under pressure to come up with a nice little impactful sentence, but I think
or something
um,
you wish you'd known 20, 30 years ago, or yeah.
I mean, I think that I always think you should lean into challenges. Don't be afraid of them. Um, and I think there's a lot of people step back, and there's a few that I'll say, yeah, you know, we can do this. Let's move on. But 20 or 30 years ago, I I would have loved to gone into some of these startup businesses, turnaround situations with the knowledge I've got now.
Yeah.
But you can't get it without being in the
I was
situation.
going to say,
So
wouldn't we all love to have been more effective 20 or 30 years ago and
yeah,
more
yeah,
experienced? But
and I think
um,
it's it's one of these, you know, just do what interests you and challenges you.
yeah, I think that's great advice. Lean in on the challenges, and I think that's very pertinent to our audience too, because as accountants, although I'm not going to pander to the stereotype, but there is a degree of truth that sometimes we do swim. We stay in safe harbors, don't we? So
Yeah,
you've had a fascinating career. It's great that you're giving back and continuing to do great work. Um, really appreciate the time and some of the wisdom and experience that you've shared with us today.
I appreciate you inviting me along, Richard.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks for that.
Much
Catch you later.
appreciated.
Cheers.